When you're ready.
The investigative question that our group decided to look into is, can being an athlete negatively affect one's mental health? After combining all of our information and research, we have come to the conclusion that yes, being an athlete in today's day and age can cause poor mental health on athletes. We will be looking at this from three main lenses. They are scientific, social, and philosophical. It's important that athletes are able to maintain a stable mental health because if they have a poor mental health, it can lead to a loss of motivation. And a loss of motivation can lead athletes to quitting their sport over time. If an athlete has to deal with depression or anxiety, it can lead to a decrease in their physical performance. It can also lead to a change in their physical health.
The first lens I'm going to be talking about is the scientific lens. Through this lens, we found statistics on the connections between athletes and their mental health, and the negatives on why athletes have such high rates of anxiety and depression, while also looking at the positive aspects on how playing sports can boost your mood. First, stress is a very common emotion throughout many athletes in our society today. This can lead to common mental health disorders such as depression or anxiety. As athletes grow up, skill level for their sport also increases. But this can also lead to more stress throughout pressure from your parents, coaches, and teammates. Parents and coaches want nothing but the best for their athletes, but this can mean that they can start to compare one athlete to the next and expect them to have the same training schedule or plan. This can create stress for the athlete as they feel like they have to meet the expectation of what their coaches and parents want for them. In a study done of 200 athletes, 91% of athletes said that they have experienced stress some point throughout their life, but only 25% of them said that they have sought the help that they need. When an athlete don't have an outlet and they have an overwhelming amount of built up stress and anxiety, this can lead to loss of motivation and for them to shut down. This leads to my next slide of energy burnout. As I talked about on the previous slide, energy burnout is very common for athletes when they have an overwhelming amount of stress or anxiety. As shown on this picture, 39.2% of female athletes and 34.7% of male athletes said that they have experienced burnout at some point in their life. While although burnout is very common, it looks different for many different people. The most common three side effects include no motivation, depression, and a decline in performance. Although there are many negatives on your mental health while being an athlete, there are also some positives. While playing sports, your body can release endorphins and dopamine. Endorphins focus on relieving pain naturally, while dopamine expects you to motivate you to do something to do over and over again. Dopamine and endorphins create a positive aspect of playing and can help you distract yourself from the real pain and the real life problems that you're experiencing.
Next, we're going to dive into the social aspect of our topic, where I specifically look at two main points, both of which have connections to social media in some capacity. First of those 2 points is the impact that social media can have on athletes overall. And it's important to note that social media has become a huge primary source for news, discussion, and trends in the sports community, and it overall has become a great platform for athletes to express themselves on, no matter the sport. With that outlet and platform being so large, however, that also means that there's a lot of room for negative input to help contrast out the positive. Getting more specific, this extremely large platform can help pave the way for exposure that these athletes are susceptible to, as everything that they do is now placed under a huge microscope for the whole world to see, and leaving them more susceptible to insults and any negative comments that they may receive online. Lastly, being a serious athlete means that at some point in your playing career, the competition level in your sport is going to go up, which means an increase in pressure is inevitable. That increase in pressure helps tie back to that exposure piece once again, as the spotlight is shined on your sport, what you do in that sport, and that can negatively affect a person's mental health in the form of depression and anxiety. The next point is the overall comparison of athletes. In a social context, we're dealing with a concept called comparison anxiety. This concept comes up when athletes find themselves comparing themselves to other athletes that they may see on social media, specifically other athletes' achievements, accolades, routines, and things of that nature. This can create pressure or the false narrative that an athlete has to be better or has no choice than to outdo the person that they see themselves compared to online, and that can overall lead to feelings of anxiety and inadequacy in performance. Observing others online can also be seen as a distraction, as it strays focus away from preparation and overall just overstimulates the mind. which can make it difficult to maintain mental clarity and concentration. And the last point, but probably most important, is the concept of negative self-talk, which can come into fruition if an athlete sees any negative comments or negative opinions about themselves online. As it's a concept that's referred to as an internal dialogue fueled by external forces, which can overall have an impact on self-confidence and performance in general.
Next, I'll be talking about the philosophical lens. I'll be relating philosophy to sports psychology. Relating them both, they both are very similar and they both share the same roots of studying human beings, but the difference is philosophy talks about what the human condition is and the basic knowledge about it, while psychology is why the human condition is and why the behavior is that way. So then how does philosophy and sports relate to sports psychology? As talked about before, social media plays a huge role into the mental health of athletes, and it brings about the need to be perfect. This brings about the philosophy of perfectionism, which comes into play where athletes feel like they need to be perfect or they feel like they need to meet a certain standard to be able to feel good about themselves. Most athletes that do experience perfectionism feel as if they are not good enough. Seeing other people being brought about and publicized while other athletes are doing things can make you think that you need to be perfect when in reality that's not going to happen. So my second point, mental health issues caused by perfectionism can also be associated with family relation, coach relation, and also teammate relation. If you're not performing how you hope, unrealistic goals that you have set can make you feel as if you are failing or if you're not good enough. Also, your family members and your coaches and your teammates pushing this on you can also make you feel as if you aren't good enough. Idealism is also associated with perfectionism, as idealism is the unrealistic dream of being perfect for yourself or for others. While perfectionism instituted in not only athletes is their strive to be great, it is also because of social media and the comparison through that. Getting rid of social media could be a solution, but that has many drawbacks. That would take away the good aspects of sports, which would be being able to highlight your good plays, being able to network between having endorsement deals and also finding new opportunities, as well as connecting with your favorite teams and players. The average student athlete spends about 4 to 4.5 hours per day on social media, which makes it hard to get rid of social media as a whole. But some athletes choose to get rid of social media just so that they can ease their mind and their mental health. Another way to help with the ideal of perfectionism is sports psychology. Using psychological knowledge, they can use that to address the stresses that happen to athletes in sports as well as to help their overall well-being. Positive talk, relaxation, skills planning, and imagery are all used and practiced during sports psychology. As many athletes struggle to reach out for their mental health, this sports psychology can be used to help combat that.
There are many different approaches that athletic programs can take to help improve the well-being of their athletes. One way is to educate coaches. If coaches learn and educate themselves on what suffering may look like within their athletes, they can help improve their mental health. It's also important for athletes to be able to reach out for help by learning these signs. One way of reaching out is seeking mental health professionals, like counselors. This is why it's so important for there to be easy access to counselors for mental health. It's also important to make sure that athletes are not being overworked. This can be implemented through regular check-ins and screenings throughout the season. And another way that athletic programs can help improve the mental health of athletes is setting realistic goals. Setting realistic goals can help athletes stay motivated and they can focus on their sports. There are both short-term and long-term goals that can be focused on. Short-term goals can help with the day-to-day focus and performance of athletes, while the long-term goals can help give the athlete something to strive for in the long run. All of these solutions offer help to athletes in any way that they need. If an athlete wants to improve their mental health, there are many ways to do so. In conclusion, athletes face a lot of pressure, whether it's from their teammates, coaches, or parents. All of this stress and pressure can lead to burnout over time. Social media also has a large impact on an athlete's mental health. It has both its pros and its cons. Social media can be good for reaching out and connecting with fans, but it can also cause stress and anxiety, especially when comparing athletes to one another. And finally, coaches need to be supportive and understanding, especially after a tough game, which can help athletes stay mentally strong. So by keeping things simple, recognizing what stress looks like, taking care of yourself, and having supportive coaches, Athletes can thrive both on and off the field.
Thank you. Jalen, what's a way in which your team's resolution conclusion makes you think differently about your own individual research?
Our resolution, specifically coming from Emily's argument, she talked about endorphins and dopamine, and that was like a big part in our overall presentation, and that kind of shined more light on the positives of it. And our claim was that being an athlete can have negative effects to your mental health. So I guess her specific point of view kind of helped change my how I saw my own specific argument, as I focus more on the negatives of social media and being an athlete and the hardships that come with that in general.
Okay, all right, thank you. Kendall, how did the group decide to include Emily's perspective in the overall presentation?
I think we decided to include hers into the overall presentation because she did scientific and she was able to find different statistics on how many athletes would quit before a certain age, or how many experience burnout, just to see the vast majority, to see how much this problem is really affecting athletes and how it's turning into people choosing not to play their sport anymore, or it's affecting more than just their mental health and their body in general.
Okay, thank you. All right, Hannah, give one specific way your thinking changed as a result of learning about Jalen's findings.
After coming across Jalen's findings, it definitely helped me change the landscape of how I thought. It gave me a more modern understanding of the overall topic, whether it was the role that social media played with an athlete's mental health, or if it was the comparison of athletes. It definitely helped specify some of the research I looked for, while it was also helping me gain more of an understanding for the overall topic.
Okay, thank you. And Emily, if you had another team member, what perspective could they have researched that would have made a useful contribution to your project?
Yeah, so if we had another team member, we'd also want to look through the historical lens, because as Hannah talked about the futuristic lens and Kendall talked more about the philosophical and the sports psychology, obviously back then there wouldn't be as many resources as we have now, so we'd want to look at the comparisons of how the resources we have today are help improving the general mental health of athletes.
Okay, thank you.